Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please settle down. May I request those of you carrying mobile phones to kindly keep them switched off or in the silent mode. On behalf of Shine.com, I welcome you to the 16th Hindustan Times Shine HR Conclave, the New Delhi chapter that features senior HR leaders who will debate on the topic diversity as business strategy. Globally, diversity in the workplace has become a politically correct cause to espouse. However, political correctness should not be confused with sincerity of action. The nature of a company's approach to diversity will ultimately determine its outcome. Diversity promotes creativity, and heterogeneous groups have been shown to produce better solutions to problems and a higher level of critical analysis. One of the questions that corporate India, however, needs to answer is, are organizations really looking at the diversity agenda as a means of business profitability, or does diversity remain more as part of the company's CSR initiative? Diversity for Indian corporates today can be broadly put into 4 key parameters of gender, caste, race, differently abled, and perhaps now a 5th of LGBT. How are organizations addressing each of these key issues, and are they actively working to ensure a work environment that is conducive to the diverse needs of these different groups? To discuss some of these incisive questions, the 16th Hindustan Times Shine HR Conclave, the New Delhi chapter, will see senior HR leaders deliberate and debate on diversity as business strategy. Before I invite the participants of the panel to join me on stage, I'd like to invite Mr. Nagesh Basavanhalli, the President and Managing Director of Fiat Chrysler Automobiles India, to make the opening remarks. Mr. Basavanhalli has been working with Fiat Chrysler, Daimler Chrysler, and Asian automakers, both in North America and in Asia. His past experiences include building new business in the engineering services area and developing them both as organic and inorganic means. He was responsible for setting up offices in emerging markets across India, China, and Eastern Europe to leverage global engineering services as well as low-cost country sourcing opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, the President and Managing Director of Fiat Chrysler Automobiles India, Mr. Nagesh Basavanhalli.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you again for making it out here. It's indeed an honor and pleasure for me to be here and spend a couple of minutes. A great agenda, a great topic in this global age with diverse talent and the hunt for talent across various countries. Over the last couple of years, I myself have been very fortunate enough that we've worked with people either in China, India, and the rest of the world. So I think a great topic. What I also would like to do is spend a couple of minutes and show you where Fiat Chrysler is in India today. It's a brand that's evolving itself, it's reinventing itself. Fiat Group is the 7th largest automaker in the world today. And it's a conglomerate that is very significantly present in India. It's been around for a while. It's a conglomerate that has over 7,000 people when you look at the entire Fiat Group, which combines both the automotive and the industrial groups and some of the component groups that we have in the company. It's got several brands, and then of course, it's got locations across the length and breadth of the country. We are fortunate enough that we touch on any given day about 200,000. Our car park today is about 200,000, 2 lakh people who drive, touch, see, feel a Fiat car. So we continuously strive to improve upon that and work to give them a better experience. Over the last couple of decades, we've had several cars that have come through our stable. Clearly, this year, we will have a lot more. So these are some of the cars over the last 4 decades. What's really happening in the last 12 to 13 months in our company is nothing short of reinventing ourselves. We went solo. We had a collaboration with Tata Motors. On April 1st of 2013, we went exclusive. We set up our own, what we call the 3-pillar strategy, which was building the network, building our brand, and expanding our product portfolio. In terms of the network, to date, we have about 112 points of sale across the length and breadth of the country. And then in terms of the customer connect activities, we have customers who are coming back to the stable. It's a brand that's been known for a long time, but it's a brand that globally has grown in terms of the market share, whether it's in Europe or South America or North America. And then some of the customers who are used to the technology and innovation worldwide are getting to see this back here. And then in terms of the product strategy itself, we just announced in the Delhi Motor Show 2 months ago that we will be bringing in 4 new products. So technically, we will, by the end of the year, we'll be a 5-product company playing in the B segment, the C segment, the SUV segment, as well as the enthusiast or the performance segment, which would be the Abarth 500, and then, of course, the Linea and the Punto. So with that, we are very grateful to our fans, to our diverse set of fans across the length and breadth of the country. Some images of them being in rallies, enjoying. We, in the Fiat family, believe we're not in the business of just transportation. Of course, that's a fundamental need, providing mobility needs for the people. But in addition to that, it's the sheer joy of driving. It's the ability to provide people the fun to drive vehicles, the ability to provide them technology and innovation is paramount in what we do. For that, we have a very talented group of people, engineers, designers, as well as manufacturing people who work day in and day out to make the driving experience very valuable. I will end my note with a small initiative, a very small initiative. While we are in the business of mobilizing people or mobilizing, get mobility to the people, we're also doing a small initiative with Jaipur Foot, which is all about providing prosthetic limbs to the less fortunate to give them mobility. So that's a very small initiative that we're doing, and we will continue to do that. I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you an overview of where the Fiat Group itself is evolved. It is a brand that's been around in India, but it is a brand that's reinventing itself. I encourage your colleagues to go to a Fiat showroom, experience the great sales and the service that we are putting together to international standards, which was not there just a year ago. So with that, I wish you all the very best for the rest of the conference. A lot of the good discussions in terms of the speakers and the panel discussions that are going to come forward. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Have a great rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Basavanhalli. It is, as you said, a brand that all of us have grown up with. Many of us have learned to drive a car on a Fiat, so we're glad to have you here, and we're glad that you're reinventing yourself and also having happy wheels all over. I'd like to now invite our speakers for the panel discussion to kindly take their seats on the dais, and as they join me on stage, I'll be introducing each of them to you. Mr. Anirudh Banerjee is HR head at Yahoo India, based in Bangalore, and executes Yahoo's HR strategy in India and oversees the delivery of key HR functions in the organization. If I could request you, Mr. Banerjee, to please come up. Attracting the best talent has always been a priority at Yahoo, and Mr. Banerjee works with various stakeholders internally and externally to create an unparalleled employee experience, making Yahoo the absolute best place to work. Having worked across 2 continents, he brings with him a global perspective that is matched by strong HR experience in the technology and digital space. He's held various HR leadership roles in organizations in a career spanning 20 years. Mr. Himanshu Sekhar Patti is Director Personnel and Administration, Human Resource Development Training and Law at the Steel Authority of India. He joined SAIL as a management trainee at the Rourkela steel plant and has worked in different capacities in different branches of SAIL. During his long stint of 27 years in Rourkela, He contributed immensely to establish sound personnel practices and policies, as well as novel and innovative concepts in the areas of township management. Some of these practices and concepts have been accepted across all the plants of Steel Authority of India. Mr. Krish Shankar, a seasoned HR personnel professional with extensive experience of around 30 years across various leading organizations like Bharti Airtel, Unilever, and Aisha. He recently joined Philips as the head of human resource for South Asia and is part of the India management team. He's based in Gurgaon and responsible for spearheading the Philips talent strategy and the human resource team in the region. Mr. Shankar's key focus is to partner with the leadership team to shape the talent agenda at Philips. Mr. Samir Vadhavan, is Vice President, Human Resource and Services, Coca-Cola India and Southwest Asia. He has been associated with Coca-Cola for 4 years now. He's also the Senior Strategic Business Partner for Coca-Cola India and Southwest Asia region. Prior to Coca-Cola, he was working with Nokia Siemens Networks India, where he was the head HR services and global entities at the India region. Samir has also worked with leading organizations such as Cadence Design Systems, Hewlett-Packard, Duracell, and with Ranbaxy Laboratories. With over 2 decades of experience, he has played a leadership role in setting up HR strategy, leading end-to-end business strategic functional initiatives, and guiding his team to be effective as business partners and leveraging other HR constituents, namely shared services and centers of expertise. He's a certified career coach and trainer. Mr. Sandeep Girotra, Senior Vice President and Head Global Human Resources at Ranbaxy. He has over 20 years of experience working in various organizations in India and abroad, like SIEL Limited, DuPont India, General Electric, and Convergys Corporation. Mr. Girotra has successfully built and led strong teams across various geographies and has considerable knowledge and functional expertise in the core areas of human resource strategy, leadership development, talent management, and human resource operations. He has a very strong business orientation with good operational background and a consistent track record of leading human resources function in diverse industries. To moderate this session, we have Mr. Nishay Suri, Partner and Country Head, People and Change, KPMG. He joined KPMG from Mercer Consulting, where he was the Managing Director and CEO for their India operations. He's worked with global and local corporations in areas of HR strategy and transformation, leadership and talent management, and rewards in more than 25 countries. He was also a global partner with Hewitt Associates, where he held a number of strategic leadership roles in the consulting business, both in India and other parts of the Asia-Pacific region. Mr. Suri?
Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible? Audible? I see a lot of friends. Hello. Very good evening to all of you, and a very interesting subject. If you're impressed enough with the illustrious panel, can we get down to some business? This is a real opportunity for us to discover the myths and the truths about diversity and how they apply to an organization and a business. But before we do so, I thought here's an opportunity also to get to know the real people other than where they worked and how well we've all done for ourselves. I'm going to call out certain accomplishments other than professional, and maybe you can take a guess as to who that individual might be on the panel. Okay? So let's begin with that. So who do you think the DJ is on the panel here? There's a DJ amongst us. Who do you think the DJ is? Can only be wrong. I mean, that's the only downside. There's no other. This is not time of where your manager is sitting to decide your next salary increase. So go ahead and take a wise guess. Who's the DJ on the panel?
Mr. Patel, Mr. Sandeep.
Okay, you probably named everyone.
Somebody's right.
So Ani here he owns 16,000 CDs.
Records
and records.
Records and CDs, yeah.
Records and CDs, so, and all legitimate. Okay?
legit.
So he's
No
bought
downloads.
each one of them.
Yeah.
He's obviously spending a lot of his salary that he takes home on his collection.
Yeah.
So welcome, Ani. Thank you for being on the
Cheers.
panel today.
Thank you.
We've also got a debater, an avid debater. In fact, he's the only individual who qualifies to be on the panel because the rest of them are all HR professionals. He's the only debater. So to be on a panel, you have to be a good debater. Who's the debater on the panel? Okay, Mr. Patti. Welcome, Mr. Patti.
Thank you.
Welcome to the panel. And he spent a lot of his youth debating at college and university levels and also was very good at it. So got a lot of awards and prizes for doing so. There are very few people that you come across that have worked in countries that are kind of sworn enemies like India and Pakistan. Who's the one person on the panel here who's worked in both Korea and Japan? Sandeep, yeah. It seems people are paying attention to your bio more than anyone else. Yeah?
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. And we've also got somebody who's a Reiki master with us. So who do you think practices Reiki? He's a Reiki master. Samir, this looks are deceptive. So Samir, welcome to the panel. Look forward to a very engaging discussion. Now there are only two of us left, so I guess you have a 50% chance of being right. Your probability is increased dramatically from where you begun. We have a person who worked with an Anglo-Dutch company, an Indian company, and a Dutch company, in whichever order. Krish, welcome Krish to the panel. Thank you. And I do a little bit of singing once in a while, so that's my, I thought I'd keep the best for the last.
That's a lie, huh?
That's a lie? I'll have to prove myself. At an opportune time, I will sing for you. Okay, given that we've been invited to talk about diversity, I thought we'd begin. And I've been told there are two things that work well in a panel discussion. One is, of course, involvement strategy. You would have seen glimpses of that already. I thought we'll further that a little more. And I'm going to read out certain statements. So please pay attention to what I'm reading out. And if you agree with it, please put up your hand. The instruction is very simple. Indians have a higher tolerance to diversity. If you agree with it, please put up your hand. Indians have a higher tolerance to diversity. We have a very poor opinion of ourselves, so very few people have put up their hand. But nevertheless, it seems we don't. Good. Second statement. Americans are pushy negotiators. Americans are pushy negotiators. If you believe the statement is true, please put up your hands. Very few again. So they don't believe Americans are pushy negotiators. Women multitask better than men.
Absolutely. No question. It's a given.
Your wife is watching, huh?
Gen Y believes in success at any cost, which means they want to be successful at any cost. Gen Y believes, so again, in the minority. The one that stood out was women are much better multitaskers than men, clearly. Here's another interesting one. Single individuals spend more hours at work compared to married. Single individuals, people who are single, end up spending more time at work compared to those who are married. I thought it was actually the converse, but and pretty much this audience believes the same. Length of the marriage. People who work part-time are less likely. How many HR professionals in this gathering? Can you please raise your hands? And if you've forgotten you're an HR professional, I absolutely agree with you. It's sometimes good to forget. It's not a fraternity that one tom-toms about a lot. People who work part-time are less likely to get a high performance rating as compared to full-time staff. So if you're a part-timer, the likelihood of you getting a rating which is better than somebody who works full-time is much lower. You believe part-time staff will get a better rating than full-time staff? So then why are you not raising your hand? So let me read it out again. People who work part-time are less likely to get a high performance rating, less likely to get a high performance rating as compared to full-time staff. It depends. Okay, good. Now the reason for doing this is all of us, and this is a good way of introducing the subject, we all have stereotypes. Another stereotype that I often come across is women are poor at mathematics. How many of you agree that women are poor at mathematics? Largely. He's playing it safe. Largely. So these are stereotypes that we carry, and I thought this would be a good way of now bringing in a business perspective to diversity. These are all dimensions in daily lives that we come across. And these are biases or prejudices, depending whether they are negative or positive gives it a different spin. So let me start with Krish. Krish, the topic today is diversity as a business strategy. As you make sense of the topic, what does diversity have to do with business to begin with?
Yeah, let's, can you hear me? Now, I think this point about diversity, we've been talking about it for quite some time, yeah, and I'm just going to talk about my experiences, firstly in Unilever, then in Airtel, and now with Philips. And companies like Unilever, I think long back thought about diversity in a very different way. I think when you look at multinationals, the first thing about diversity is how do we really develop local leaders, yeah, all across different countries. How do you get more local leaders taking up rather than expats coming into to do that? Now, that was a kind of a big initiative, and does it make business sense? Yes, because they clearly want people who can understand the local business, who can drive the country in that area. So I think, and therefore, that's one of the things that really came up. Now, we all talk about women and why, and I think most really, why does it make business sense? There are 3 or 4 big reasons that we can really see from examples of industries and with real data. Number one, for any company, half our consumers are women, yeah, and half the kind of, and especially for FMCG, in fact, the people who buy are all women, and therefore, the guys who got to think about products or make products have got to understand what women want, and therefore, it really makes sense for FMCG to have a lot more people and women, a lot more women in marketing, because you actually can understand, get the right insights and develop products. So does it make business sense? Absolutely. You can't imagine, I mean, just take a product like soup or,
Coke.
Coke, I don't know. But I'm just taking anything, for example, soup or anything to do with, who would understand it better than women, because, they are the ones who cook it, they understand what goes into it, and I think the insights about it really come to women. And if there's a marketing manager who understands those insights better, I think it would be more easily, it will be a lady who could understand that. So therefore, does it make sense? It does make. In fact, I think that so therefore, these are very specific direct business benefits of having women. But there's one big benefit which many of you also spoke about. It's about how every organization is a microcosm of the society in which we live in. And if an organization, if you're really talking about a society which is 50% women, and in the organization you find that's not the case. In many cases, many companies in India range anywhere between 20% to 5%. Then does it really signify the society? Can you take the right decisions? Do you have the right balance of what you call the right balance of abilities to take the right decisions? Probably no. And I think with experience, people have found that having more women in leadership, more women at different levels of the organization, help you take the right decisions which reflect what the society is. And therefore, the importance of women really comes into picture. So I think putting all of this, I would say for any organization, to ensure that there's right leadership, there's right culture in the organization so that you really get the appropriate mix of both genders in the organization, to reflect the kind of consumers that you deal with, to reflect the kind of products that you deal with. I think it really makes business sense to have more women. Now, last point, I think diversity, I said, is not just left to women. Women is one. I spoke about multinationals which talk about local leaders as diversity. There are other factors also. But I think within India, most companies have because I think one area we tend to not see is that we tend to hire people who are always in our own, who've been successful. So therefore, traditionally, certain types of people have been successful and we try to promote and hire those kind of people. And over time, we found that that has really led to a kind of having a kind of, everyone being the same. And therefore, you don't really take the right decisions. And after some time, you discover that, listen, my companies, all of us are the same. We now have to hire people from outside who's going to give us a new perspective. And that's why diversity is very important in terms of having people who can think differently. So I thought these are 4 or 5, in my experience, 4 or 5 reasons where I think diversity can really make simple business sense to our everyday lives.
Thanks, Krish. So we've got a good start. It seems that we have many more takers for diversity than not. And it's a subject that I've rarely come across where somebody says, no, diversity doesn't make business sense. But I want to be a little provocative as we talk about reality. Why is the reality so very different, Sandeep, from all the business sense that we make of diversity? Whether it's local leadership, growing leaders of the right kind with the right so-called skill sets. In our recruitment, very little attention is paid to actually different social backgrounds and different experiences coming in. You're pretty much bringing in the same kind of people again and again. With women leadership that we speak about, that having them in the organization has these benefits. What really comes in the way? Why is there such a distinct departure from something that makes perfect business sense and the reality? Are we missing something?
Well, okay. See, first of all, let me apologize on behalf of the organizers over here, because none of the panelists sitting over here is a woman, and that kind of also explains the issue that we are grappling with.
You're apologetic.
I'm apologetic.
Okay.
On behalf of the organizers. Having said that, I think, also in an extremely politically charged environment as we are in right now, I think it is also something that we try and do most of the time, which is play to the gallery. And most of the HR guys or leadership is guilty of doing that more often than not. As we were talking about right outside this room, I think it would be politically incorrect for any one of us to say that diversity is not important, especially when it comes to gender. Having said that, we all say the right things, we all sing the right tune, but when it comes to it, I think the business realities, and that's where the dichotomy is, we're talking about diversity and business, and the business realities and the urgency, criticality of business takes the precedence. So we are not, a lot of companies, I worked in GE, and it was a stated philosophy that everything being equal, we obviously would be looking at women, and we practice that, and a lot of companies do that. I don't want to take anything away from that, but it takes a lot of patience, courage, and desire to do that and translate what you say on a day-to-day basis and make it a part of your spirit.
So what were the business benefits of GE? So GE as a company, what were the business benefits that you saw directly playing out, other than saying, okay, everything being equal, we will prefer women? How did that translate into any business benefit for the organization? Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, I'll give you two examples, and one of them may sound a little frivolous, but nonetheless. And it's nothing to do with GE, I'm saying generally. Two benefits. Number one benefit is going to be, as what Krish mentioned, half of our customers are women, and I think we need to cater to that segment of the population.
So is the hypothesis that women can serve women better? I mean, is that the hypothesis that if you have a woman salesperson and a woman customer?
I don't know. I mean, I can't. There is no empirical data around it which says that. You know, the fact is that at least the person who's selling would be able to understand the person that he is selling to or she is selling to. That's a hypothesis that, you know, it would connect better. But having said that, I was going somewhere else, you know, which is that women tend to bring in a lot more calmness in the decision-making process. And I know I have a couple of my women colleagues sitting over here, and I can see them smile. But that's a reality. I think, and that's very important. When you take a decision, when you are into a decision-making process, it is all about, you know, how you go through various pros and cons and then come up with your right decision. And I think women have belief normally bring a lot of calmness to a heated discussion or any discussion.
So isn't that a stereotype? So the way we started our discussion today was with stereotypes. And at the heart of this discussion is that all individuals are unique.
Now, let me first of all say that you've been watching Times Now quite a bit, you know, so you didn't allow me to complete.
No, but the point is, Sandeep, I think it's important
I know.
that in this discussion, we challenge some of these stereotypes that continue to linger on, saying that women can serve women better. Now, or women are calm in situations that is required when there's stress.
Well,
or
I wouldn't say it's a stereotype, you know, that's a reality. You know,
it's not a reality.
Largely, it would be a reality. I mean, ask 50% people sitting over here would say yes, and more than that. I think we all, at least my own experience has been that there is a distinct advantage when you have diverse set. And I would like to go and quote what Krish talked about. Diversity is not about only gender, you know, diversity is all about ideas and people who bring those ideas along, you know. So any diverse setting, and we are taking an example over here, gender, you know, any diverse setting is always going to give you different perspectives. And once you get those different perspectives, I think the decision-making process is always going to be more rational than not. So
the one takeaway from our conversation is, the different perspective is more important than where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Would you agree, Sameer? Yeah. The perspective which is different is more important than where it comes from.
Yeah.
Whether it comes from a man or a woman is not central to the discussion. It's actually, like Gartner said, it's multiple intelligences that's at the so-called, the epitome of diversity is in the intelligences that exist, rather than who embodies them. And our entire conversation, I think, is confused with the social construct. So we have a social responsibility, and I very well appreciate that, to bring women into the workforce. But when you start confusing that with business realities, I think the agenda no longer remains purist.
Well, Nishri, I totally agree with you, and I think what you're doing exactly over here is making it more provocative than what it used to, it ought to be. But the fact is, here we are talking about diversity of ideas.
You'll still give me business,
sure.
We're friends.
Sure. Huh? Yeah, of course. See, the fact is that we are talking about diversity of ideas here, you know, irrespective of where they come from. Now, if we stick to that piece, where are diversity of ideas going to come from? From people who have had diverse experiences. And let's accept the fact that a man would have, that too in my own experience, a man versus a woman would have two different experiences, you know, because there are the entire social fabric and so on and so forth will have two different experiences, and there's nothing wrong in it, you know, there's nothing right or wrong in it, you know, two different experiences, and hence there's diversity of ideas.
Great. Okay, so Sameer, let me bring in Sameer. Okay, you want to make a point,
I think it's an important point. Diversity is, yes, it's all about different ideas. But I think the problem in India, which if you can look at the whole canvas of diversity, that you need people with different ideas, and women being one part of it, I think India is abysmal in this. You look at any other country in the world, take China, take Indonesia, take Philippines. I mean, the number of women in the workforce is almost about
higher.
40 to 50%.
Much higher.
India, we're struggling at about 10%. Now, we can all talk of ideas and this, but if we can't really look at it in the face and say yes, and you mentioned this, I mean, this is, and it's not about organization. I think this is something which is a deep-rooted issue within India.
Sure.
I mean, why, even in Africa, you have more women working. Even in Africa, you go to Kenya, you find almost 35% women working in Africa. Latin America, yes. What's wrong with India? Why do we really come to that? I mean, that's, I think it's an area that yes, you can get all ideas. You need different types of people, that's fine. But I think just take women, and what is it that we can do to address that one specific area? Because I think as a subcontinent, Sri Lanka is better, but I think India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan are 3 countries which are abysmal when it comes to women. So what is it that we can do?
So women participation in the workforce is a challenge, is a reality for India. We all have a role to play as responsible citizens. We have a role to play as organizations, and there is a social responsibility that we need to fulfill. Now, Samir, in organizations, as you've understood it, is this understanding absolutely clear that let's not confuse the 2 agendas? Like now there is a confusion between CSR and business, and they've tied the 2 together in some form. In fact, they've enforced it. So a percentage of your profits now needs to be spent. But there is an understanding. This you're doing with the responsibility of solving a larger problem in the country. Has this been in some sense confused, that diversity as a business strategy? It was like CSR as a business strategy, right? So people were doing more social work to be able to gain more. And I didn't hear of many customers who would check when they went into an Apple store or a Samsung store, was Apple more socially responsible or Samsung when they made their purchase decision. So in your organization, in your experience, and may the truth prevail, is the agenda confused?
I think in my experience has been as it's about recognizing why diversity becomes important for your business. That's the prime focus. In a business like ours, which operate in a multicultural, multi-country perspective, our ability to understand, embrace, and operate in a multicultural world is very critical. And it is critical for the type of product we make, its long-term sustainability of that business. So how we use this ability of inclusion at workplace and also at marketplace is important.
And how do you define inclusion?
Inclusion is it's trying to create a workplace which is diverse. Because it is diverse at the workplace, it is able to seize and see the opportunities, seize the opportunities which are in a diverse marketplace. For that, my definition of diversity gets expanded then. It is not only a particular dimension of diversity. For me, diversity becomes a strategic business platform. It is at the workplace, where workplace is all about thought and people, diversity of people, diversity of thought, and it takes me beyond. In fact, I don't like the word diversity. I think diversity has to have another word with it, diversity and inclusion. Because the moment you start using the word diversity, we are talking about divergence. And when we start using it along with inclusion, we are talking about convergence. And when you are using it as a business strategy, you are using it across all your customers and consumers, and that's where you're going to service your marketplace. And I think if we have very clear business strategic platform where diversity and inclusion are defined, and inclusion has all other elements, marketplace, communities. You talked about social responsibility because we will be operating in communities. You cannot be, as a business, be off the communities. You have to have a social license to operate, right? And also the value chain in which we are operating. Like my value chain starts from what we call as groove to glass, from farm to the bottling, you know. And across the value chain, am I impacting my diversity and inclusion agenda? And in the process, when you do that, when you are seen as somebody who's impacting that, for a business, it is a sustainability thing, because I am preferred brand, I am positioned there. And from the business perspective and from the diversity perspective, I am promoting something which is also responding to the social model we have. Problem happens is, I think when the business and the companies confuse their diversity agenda as an initiative, when it becomes more like a reputation that I do have a diversity agenda, if I don't have it, I won't be sitting on this table, right? And I think the linkage of your initiative flowing from the business strategy is to be very critical, and you need to have a vision. When we set up in India our diversity agenda, it was not a diversity agenda all alone. It was part of our strategic business plan called Vision 2020. Out of 6 parameters on which we will deliver profit, productivity, partnerships, other elements of business, people was one element, and we called out our diversity agenda there and then. The moment the vision was set, then we started working towards actioning on that vision through the various strategies. And yes, I think what happens is you start with, probably with, in our social context, with gender, because it seems easy to do. That's what I think everybody, and the disparity and inequality is too huge. It's showing on your face. But you need to evolve beyond gender and start including other dimensions of diversity in terms of ethnicity, differently abled, multi-generational workforces, and other dimensions, because it's all about creating that multi-dimensional lens in your business with which then you can go and see your multi-dimensional customers, because you are catering to a vast diversity of your consumers and customers, and then you can understand when you have this strong an agenda.
Ani, coming to you.
And I like to end it with, I was reading through about Sheryl Sandberg's one of the quotes which came in the latest Forbes magazine. She said, business will take diversity seriously if it impacts its bottom line.
Correct, of course.
And I think as long as diversity as an initiative is one of the nice to do initiatives and not got a strong business driven sense, it will be not making an impact, and we will be struggling with the sub-dimensions of it in a suboptimal fashion.
I wonder if this is a kind of fad word. We had shareholder value. For many years, we were using shareholder value. I think in every presentation, you would see maximizing shareholder value was critical. And there was the age and generation of execution. And there was, at one stage, strategy is not really important. Execution is really important. CSR has come about. I don't know whether it dies a natural death or it's here to stay. And diversity is being tom-tommed about, at least in HR circles, for maybe the last 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. It's been important, popularized in the West. But Ani, I want to come to you. You've studied in the West, you've stayed in the West.
Born and raised there, yeah.
Born and raised there.
Yeah.
You see the world with a different lens altogether. Your experiences are different.
Yeah.
Is diversity in the way it's discussed in corporate circles in the West very different in its intensity and in its purpose, in the West compared to some of the Eastern countries, including India?
That's a great question. I think one of the things is that, in fairness to India, we are 2 decades behind kind of what's being done in the West. I'll give you an example. So I'm obviously showing my age. If I go back to, so over 20 years I've been in HR, the start of my career was actually in diversity. So the first 2 years was in a thing called employment equity, which is really reducing systemic barriers, for the, different groups like, women, visible minorities, persons with disabilities, Aboriginal. So that's like 23 years back. And believe it or not, my master's thesis, again, a couple of decades back, was the competitive advantage of managing diversity. So this is not a new topic at all.
Right.
So I think if you look at it in terms of where the West was a couple of decades back, it's not that different than here. So in fairness, I think it was, they got a bit of a head start, and also they're forced to contend with the diversity. So that's one. But I think what's kind of evolved in the West and what's going to happen here as well that I'm seeing, and particularly in the industry that I'm at, because it's all about innovation, is that to me, diversity, you can say, is a nice to have sort of thing, but the diversity and really embracing it and managing it properly leads to innovation. And when innovation is there, to me, that's one of your really sustainable competitive advantages. Now, if I look at any of our industries that we're in here, innovation is going to be a do or die kind of thing for us. So to me, I think that's what I'm seeing in the West that we're getting here as well. And the thing that I think we're learning here in India and in South Asia in general is the whole idea is having diversity is great. Hey, I got all these women and LGBTs and people from here and there. But the bottom line is it's exactly what Samir mentioned in terms of the whole inclusion. Unless you're able to include people in that diversity and make sure they're part of the mainstream and the ecosystem, you basically have what I call a one-sided coin, right? It's diversity on one side, looks like money. I go to the market, buy some vegetables, it's a slug, right? So the whole idea to me is going to be you've got to have both of those things together. And one thing I'm finding in terms of that we're learning from the West and we're getting more here is that, look at India, for example. We have a very diverse workforce, getting away from women for a second and more onto generations. We have baby boomers, we've got Gen Y, we've got Gen X. So we're starting to embrace those things right now. And if you look at India, I think we've got a really good advantage because if you look at, one stat I saw, by 2020, we're going to be the youngest country in the world, meaning that we're going to be having 64% of the population in actual workforce. And I'm not talking about child labor, I'm talking about real working people. So that means what we're doing right now in India and learning from the West is how do we embrace those different generations, the diversity, those new ideas, the new culture in the workplace. How do we make sure that we get them to help and innovate those products? And let's be honest, a lot of those millennials are going to be our bosses, right? So I think that these are some of the things I've seen in the West which are developing, particularly in the Silicon Valley, and I think they're coming here in India. So I think, to kind of your first question about, where we are, in fairness, I think we are 2 decades behind and we're catching up pretty quickly. And I think technology is helping us in that kind of catch-up phase.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned now, is the West equally obsessed still about Afro-Americans and Hispanics?
Absolutely.
And the blacks in the workforce?
Absolutely.
More than women? Did it start with women and then kind of became more holistic as an agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. So
is that the initiation?
Yeah, so if you look at, and this is even before my time, so really old, but if you look in terms of, obviously it started out with women in terms of making sure that we have more of a, let's just say if you had, 30 years ago, 20% of the workforce in North America were women, how does that reflect in your company? But then it started becoming in terms of, if I use US or Canada, African Americans or African Canadians, Hispanics, disabled people as well. So it started with women and they realized diversity was in many different areas. So I think in India, we are definitely looking at diversity first in terms of women. I think we're slowly starting to look at LGBT. I look at it in my industry, if I look at the people that work in technology and in media and the internet and digital space, consumers and even people who do the work are very much in that community. So we're trying to explore that a little bit more. Now the thing in India or in South Asia, which I think is really, one thing, and I'm a South Asian obviously, is we're afraid to talk about the diversity. We can't talk about caste. We can't talk about he's from Punjab and this guy's from Tamil Nadu. We can't talk about religions. So it's one of these things that the reality is, and I work in Bangalore, and it's a much smaller city than here, but it's just so funny in terms of the cafeteria where literally I've got my roti brigade, I got my rice brigade. You know what? This sambar is not the sambar that my mom makes. We're from Madurai. This is this parathe. This is not parathe. It's not Chandigarh. So I even have that diversity, but we're afraid to talk about it. So I think that what we're trying to do is figure out how in India are we comfortable with some levels of that diversity without being political and being casteist and all that kind of stuff. So I think that it started with women in North America, and you look at in Yahoo, we have our what we call Black Network, Latino, LGBT, Chinese, women. And we have women in technology here in India, which is the same thing as there, but we're still trying to figure out LGBT. How about different regions in India? How about urban, versus rural? How do we look at these things as well? So those are things that I think we're starting to look at.
Great, thanks, Ani.